The following video is sponsored by Appmysite. The Google Pixel 3 released in 2018 and was the third generation of flagship phone by Google. Now it's 2022 and quite a bit has changed, and so for the tempting price of around $200 on the used market, is this still a good phone? Just how much flagship does it still have in it? Let's find out, starting with the design. And by the way, timestamps are in the description if you'd like to see something specific. So in terms of design, the Pixel 3 looks pretty good. It's very minimalist, and there's nothing about it that could be considered obnoxious. Everything is quite subtle. It's got the glass slab at the top, which was classic Google design language for its time, as the same glass slab was also seen on the Google Pixel Book laptop, as well as the Google Pixel 2 from the previous year. Plus, the back is also matte glass, which is really nice to the touch, and as a bonus has wireless charging. In fact, the only area where the phone feels even slightly dated is in the bezels on the display, or more so, chins, since at this time, basically every Android phone maker was sort of in the process of implementing all-screen designs, but they weren't quite there yet. So we got these chins. But hey, at least they allow for front-facing speakers, which make the audio a lot more immersive. Plus, the chins are also better than that disaster of a notch we saw on the phone's larger counterpart, the 3XL. Now, the Pixel 3 also feels great in the hand, as it weighs in at 148 grams and is only 7.9mm thick, so it's very snug and either one or two-handed use will be comfy, similar to a lot of phones at the time, since 2018 was still the era where companies would try and make the thinnest and lightest phone possible, unlike today where basically every flagship is a behemoth. Now in terms of biometrics, we have a fingerprint scanner on the back, which is really convenient, since your finger just falls into place naturally as you pick the phone up, and I much prefer this to my iPhone's Face ID. Plus, it's also super fast and unlocks the phone with no delay. What's more is that the phone also sports quite a few classic Pixel knickknacks, like the appropriately named Flip to Shh, where you can flip the phone over and it'll activate Do Not Disturb. Super useful. Plus, you can also squeeze the sides of the phone to activate the Google Assistant, which is also pretty neat. And may I also just add that the system haptics on this phone are just terrific, literally up to par with the iPhones here. But all in all, this is definitely one of the best Pixel designs ever made. It's very stylish, with the chins really being the only dead giveaway that it's approaching 4 years old. But moving on to what's in between those chins, in terms of the display, the Pixel 3 still packs a darn decent punch, being a very capable 5.5-inch OLED panel with a resolution of 1080 by 2160, along with a pixel density of 443 pixels per inch. These numbers equate to a darn decent screen, with crispy, vibrant visuals and deep true blacks since it's OLED, and the overall size is decently big enough for watching movies and videos comfortably. In addition, it's also an always-on display, so if you want, it'll always show the time as well as any notifications, which is a really cool feature I wish Apple would take some inspiration from. Now, one gripe a lot of people did have with this panel though is its poor brightness, as it only peaks at a lousy 400 nits, which means you'll definitely have trouble using the phone in bright, sunny outdoor environments. I mean, just for some perspective, the iPhone 13 has 800 nits of peak brightness, literally double what the Pixel 3 has, so that's how much it's fallen behind. Plus, it is still only a 60Hz panel, compared to the buttery smooth 120+Hz displays as of now, but you know, this was 2018 and most smartphones only had 60, so that's fair enough I guess. It just won't be as buttery as what we have now. Apart from brightness and refresh rate though, this is pretty much a perfect panel, and has stood the test of time really well. What stood the test of time more than well enough though, is the camera setup on here, and this is where the value for money really shines. On the rear, we have just a single 12.2 megapixel shooter, and dual 8 megapixel wide and ultra wide selfie cameras, and I find it quite strange how they decided to double up on the selfie cameras instead of the rear one. You know, usually it's 2 rear cameras and 1 selfie camera. But anyway, photos taken on the main lens still look pretty applaudable by modern day standards. Details are going to be crisp, colors are going to pop out, and everything is just going to be so consistent, as you'd expect on a Pixel. Like all of these older phones, the areas where it can struggle are in those weird indoor shots where lighting isn't very bright, but not dark enough for the flash to be needed. So photos will turn out a bit grainy in these areas, but for the most part, it holds up pretty well, and it'll still work great for lots and lots of people, especially for the price point. Now, this camera also has portrait mode, which still works alright. You know, it can be a bit funny around edges at times, as all phones of its age can, but for the most part, it can take some very professional looking blurred background shots. And lastly, this camera also has night sight, which allows you to take really clear shots in pitch dark settings, and even though this kind of tech is 4 years old, it can still impress greatly, and capture detail you can't even see with your eyes in the moment. The Pixel 3's rear camera also sports some other pretty cool features, my favorite being Google Lens, which allows you to search the internet for whatever's in your shot. For example, point it at a bottle of perfume, and it'll show you web results for that specific perfume, and where to buy it, etc., which is unbelievably handy. Now the selfie camera also does a great job, again capturing lots of detail and making those colors pop out at you. So no complaints here either. And as I mentioned before, we also get an ultra-wide selfie camera, which is really useful for when you're having trouble trying to fit everyone in the selfie, plus it's also really good quality. Now moving on to video recording, the Pixel 3 can record in up to 4K at 30 frames per second, and I really have no complaints here either. There's great stabilization and colors, although again, it will likely struggle with indoor lighting, but if you're in good lighting, you can take some very impressive footage. For its time, this was top end, so therefore, it'll still capture your memories just fine today. And now, just before we move on to the performance, just a quick word from today's sponsor, Appmysite. Appmysite allows you to create a mobile app within literal minutes without writing a single line of code. You don't have to be a technical person or have done a double computer science degree to build a solid and reliable app with this program. In addition, it doesn't matter what type of website you have, whether it's WordPress or not, Appmysite works with all types of websites. You can sign up for Appmysite using the link in the description below and create your app in just a few easy steps. Firstly, once you've signed up and made an account, enter your website URL. Then you can personalize your app in terms of look and feel, and choose what content you want to display on it. There are endless possibilities, with loads of different settings in terms of layouts, user behavior, colors, and more. You can even integrate your app with services such as Firebase, chat software, and Google AdSense, which makes this an absolutely genuine option for anyone looking to build a fully fledged app but isn't a technical person. You can also preview your app from within your account or on your own device before you publish to the App Store, of which Appmysite does for you. Plus, Appmysite also publishes updates to the App Store from within your account automatically, and there's no maintenance required because they do it all. It is a truly fantastic tool that takes all the guesswork and technical work out of creating your very own app for your website. Again, you can sign up using the link in the description. And now, back to the Pixel. Now in terms of the performance, don't be fooled by this phone's age for 1 second. The Pixel 3 is still blazing fast for an almost 4-year-old phone, being still very smooth and snappy no matter what you throw at it. It sports the Snapdragon 845 chipset along with 4GB of RAM, and back in 2018, simpler times, these kind of specs were found in every flagship expensive phone on the market. Therefore today, you can still do pretty much everything with ease, whether that be browsing the web, scrolling articles or social media, or playing moderately heavy games. I mean, this chipset gets pretty much left in the dust by more recent processors, and it's not going to do nearly as well as a 2022 flagship. For example, if you're playing a really graphically intensive game, the frame rate will drop significantly, still playable by all means, but this goes to show that it's not the absolute fastest phone out there anymore. But if you're not playing any games, then for 99% of the time, the experience on here is absolutely still flagship level. Now, the longevity is also an important topic to cover, and quite an iffy one in the case of the Pixel 3. As some of you will already know, Google cut off updates for the Pixel 3 series in February this year, and so the phone will forever be stuck on Android 12. But not to worry, this doesn't mean quite as much as you might think it would. Updates aren't nearly as important on the Android side as iOS, of which a lot of apps will stop working within 1 to 2 years of the cutoff, compared to like over 4 years on Android. Android updates are more about features and security enhancements rather than app support and keeping the phone working. Therefore, even though the Pixel 3 will soon be running on quote-unquote outdated software, the phone will still work terrifically as it always has for years down the line. And you know, even now, you're still getting tons and tons of cool features from Android 12. But if you want to keep your phone for quite a long time, or you care about getting the latest updates and newest features and security patches, then this isn't the phone for you. But if you're just looking for something to keep for a short time, like 3 years max, then it won't really be an issue at all. And lastly, moving on to the battery life, well, it's not great, but it's also not awful or anything. It's common knowledge that batteries degrade over time, and because of this, most of these handsets aren't going to last nearly as long as they would have when new. And so, you're not going to want to stray too far from a charger. Of course, for light to sometimes moderate users, it should be absolutely fine, and it should still get you through a day, but anything more than that is unfortunately going to be pushing it, and you'll definitely need to plug in before the evening. It sucks, but that's just what happens as smartphones age over time, and if it does get too unbearable, you can always replace the battery, although for a phone this cheap, I don't know if paying a quarter of the phone's price would even be worth it for a battery replacement, but yeah, battery has held up alright, it should still be fine if you're not doing anything intensive. And so with my review of the Pixel 3 now out of the way, is this the right device for you? Well, there's no doubt that this is an excellent budget phone, especially in terms of camera, performance, and display, although the battery life has taken a bit of a hit after 4 years, plus the phone won't be getting any more software updates, but as I said before, being on the latest version doesn't really matter that much. Older versions will last a heck of a long time in terms of the phone being supported with apps, etc. And so, if that's all good with you, and a really long-lasting battery isn't your top priority, then for $200 this is a cracker of a deal on the used market, maybe even a whole biscuit of a deal if I'm being really generous. And if you're using one at the moment, there's really no need to upgrade anytime soon, just when you feel like it's time. But in a nutshell, the Pixel 3 has really aged well in the majority of its aspects after 4 years, and even though it's not a perfect phone in 2022, it's also really far from a bad one, or even just an okay one. If you enjoyed this video, or found it useful in any way, please make sure you drop me a like and subscribe to TechSpree for more reviews, insights, and the occasional unboxing. Thank you so much for watching. This is Tom with TechSpree, and I'll see you as always next time.